because let's talk about ensemble playing. So I want you, the panel, to react to this quote. This is, of course, the great John Williams, really famous, one of the most famous guitarists of the 20th century. But I went to his Wikipedia page, and prominently is he's talking about music education. Here's the quote: "Students are preoccupied with fingerings and not notes, much less sounds. Some are able to play difficult solo works from memory, but have a very poor sense of ensemble playing or timing." And I can say I never played in an ensemble. The idea of continual playing, I mean, it's quite foreign to where I am. As I mentioned before, it's mainly recitals and mainly competitions. It's actually it would have been kind of cool to play in an ensemble with a violinist or a cellist, or just to get a different dimension. Do you feel that's the case in classical guitar education? Are we just a lot? There's maybe too much solo playing, and maybe we could benefit from playing with other musicians in different settings. Would that be very beneficial for our overall education? So maybe Brandon, why don't we start with you first on this topic?
Yeah, I was just having this conversation yesterday with my friend who's a lute player. This, I think, for me, I would call this a crisis in the classical guitar world. I can speak only really about the U.S., but the fact that guitarists are in a bubble in their university, and the only ensemble experience most of them will get is guitar ensemble, which frankly is
Other
not a good.
guitarists.
It's not a good ensemble experience. And part of the issue is that classical guitarists, like all of us, I mean, tend to discover it late in the game. We're actually rock or blues players, and it comes time to go to college, and we kind of play catch up. Where all the pianists and the orchestra players have been doing it since they were six, and so then the level of music making isn't very high. And then if there's such a disparity among the players that the ensemble experience isn't great. Where if you go play with a singer, you play with a violinist, suddenly you're going to have to catch up to their level, and they're going to start using vocabulary, and they'll breathe in a certain way and give you body cues, and you'll have to learn how to follow their breath and speak the language, the lingo, to understand how to work in a rehearsal, and that makes you more musical. When you're stuck in the bubble and you only play this game of telephone with other guitarists, you get kind of trapped in this world. So I would encourage guitarists to, yeah, don't stay on your instrument. Don't only play with guitarists. In university programs, I think we have to expand to outside. I mean, personally, I just sought it out. I found singers. I found other ensembles. I volunteered to play in the Baroque opera and figured bass and things. And I think that's what you should be going for. And for me, that's absolutely essential. If you can only play as a soloist, you're not finding all the beauty in music, but also you're not getting those core musicianship skills that you need as an artist that will push you higher and higher as you realize, oh, I see, I can learn a lot from how to sculpt a bass line from playing with a cellist. And oh my wow, the what the singer does with the text here is so beautiful. Maybe I can imitate that, or listen to how the singer's doing vibrato. Like I can imitate that rather than trying to learn vibrato by imitating Pepe Romero. No guitarist should imitate another guitarist's vibrato. In my opinion, we should listen to singers.
Mm.
We shouldn't imitate the sustain or the from guitarists. All of the content that we could be using to infer a musical interpretation can come from the outside and not just in our own world. So yeah, I could go on, but you can see that I'm enthusiastic about this. I
Preach,
think it's absolutely
preach.
yeah. I'll keep going. It's
Uh,
absolutely essential. It's the most important part is it's I'm not being elitist. I'm not trying to talk down to anybody. It's beautiful. It's fun. There's so much good music waiting for you. Enjoy it, and it'll only good things will come from that type of experience.
Isn't it crazy that the guitar I mean, it's really like, if you think about it, it's meant to accompany people. It's really like it's got strings. You're meant to bang it out. I mean, at its most primal form. And yet, when we learn classical guitar, we barely do that. We remove ourselves from that, and we play beautiful things. But I absolutely agree with what you just said, Brandon. Now, Austin, you mentioned accompanying somebody. Yeah, tell me about ensemble playing. I mean, I'd love to get your opinion on that.
You mentioned the guitar is meant to accompany people. I should maybe mention that if you read back any biographies of someone like Giuliani, the amount of time he spends in group ensembles is is incredible. A lot of what he did was accompanying with other people. They had all sorts of groups that they were constantly playing with, such as Maysater. So a lot of there's so much chamber works by Giuliani, and a lot of that comes from because he was playing with people all the time. So like Maysater and various other names, Hummel, Moscheles. I don't know if I'm saying that right. If anyone, Ignaz. But yeah, so kind of Brandon covered a lot of it, and I think some of it's. I don't know if this is applicable everywhere, but sometimes people get into the classical guitar late, especially if they're going to university for it. So there's a little bit of catch up. So sometimes the focus is on getting the level up higher, whereas if you have a little bit more facility with the instrument, you're already doing ensembles, you're already doing all that stuff because you've had enough of that background. So sometimes guitarists are left doing catch up, and that's maybe partly why they're isolated. So yeah, but playing with instruments, it's one of those things when you're by yourself. The guitar has a lot of technical difficulties. So something as simple as shifting, so playing something legato, if you have to shift, that means your shifting technique has to be bang on, or else you'll have a break in the sound. So often I found this with myself, and I've seen this before, is when you're practicing, if you have something difficult, whereas there's a shift, a lot of times you break the continuity of the line. So it's hard to maintain a full musical phrase because the technical difficulties are getting in the way. So you're focused on breaking up all these different components, which when you're talking about the John Williams quote, they're focused on fingering. So especially if you don't have a familiar with what's going on in the music, one, you're already memorizing the notes, just trying to memorize bass patterns, then add in shifting and legato, all sorts of these other elements. So by the time you get to thinking about phrasing, you already have so many other things ahead of you that it becomes difficult to make that next step. So, but the important part about playing ensemble is that it makes you take that next step. Because if you're playing with someone else, when you're playing as a group, it doesn't matter if you got this crazy shit going on here. You got to make it work, and you have to make it sound cohesive. So that's That's one of the really valuable things. There's lots, but it gets you out of this. Oh man, the guitar, this bubble. Like I gotta, you're kind of wallowing in the difficulties of the instrument, and kind of gets you out in the world. Well, just do it. You got to figure it out, and often it pushes you to that next level, and just kind of gets you, just kind of makes you do it, kind of by trial by fire, So that's one of the important things.
Yeah, Nicola, what do you think? I mean, you're also a very experienced accompanist in early music. Does the classical guitar in general, do students not get enough ensemble playing?
Yes, and I always say to my students that there are things they can learn into the lesson, and things that you can learn only in ensemble playing, and there are things you can learn only when you go to the stage to perform. So it's important to know that you cannot learn everything a musician needs to know into the guitar lesson. And I have this kind of idea, but it's just my opinion, that the guitar was born to accompany other musicians, other dancers and singers, as we see in many guitar traditions. But as a very popular instrument, and I mean popular like folk instrument, for a long time, at the beginning of, let's say, beginning of the 20th century, some great guitarists like Segovia, like Miguel Llobet, they tried to bring the guitar out of this, let's say, circle of popular music, and to make the guitar an aristocratic instrument to be played solo in a theater. And to me, at this point, it was like, if I have to perform guitar, better to perform solo so I can show I'm a real musician, like the pianist, like the violinist. And I can understand that because at that time the guitar was not even in the conservatorium. In fact, when we see the life of Giuliani, Carulli, and many other guitarists also came after, they didn't study guitar in the school. They always studied in private lesson because it was not an instrument so important to be into the school. And that was a long time. Even in Italy, the first guitar class in conservatory was in Rome, it was like in the 1930, 1940. So it was in that moment they needed to do this, but now we are paying this choice of focusing more on solo guitar, and it's a problem because as already Brandon Austin said, it's super important to play in ensemble because you learn a lot of things that you cannot learn solo, and you can enjoy so much beautiful music that you will miss if you're not doing it. So totally, totally fine with the other colleagues. It's super important.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Segovia. Wait, let's. What is that? Works for. Pull out a little bit, Austin. Can you
back?
zoom? Yeah, is back a little bit. Which is it?
Shoot, sorry. This is so inverted. Oh my god.
I can mirror your screen. No. It's
The works
showing
for
the right.
violin, flute, violoncello, and guitar.
Is that Giuliani or is that Soar?
Giuliani. But there's
Okay.
volumes and volumes and volumes of this stuff. This is just one. It's like $1,000 for them all. But works for piano, guitar. So if anyone's like, "Wow, I don't know what to play. I don't know which ensemble works." There's so much. Go on IMSLP and try to find it. There's buckets load of really great stuff. So.